Hi, welcome to Eileen Chevalier's Typewriter Alphabet, Botany. Today we are going to look at this bleeding heart. So this one happens to be Dicentra eximina. The card that you have in the alphabet is actually a Dicentra formosa, but they're very closely related. So the Dicentra eximina is native to the eastern United States, and Dicentra formosa is the northwestern of the United States. So pretty similar, much more similar than the other bleeding heart that we did a dissection of. So this is a really tiny Lamprocopnos spectabilis. So if you want to see just a real simple bleeding heart dissection, you can go and look at that one. This one's going to be a little more complicated. We're going to use a lot of vocabulary. So if you have your cards, your flashcards, then you can go ahead and get out some of those for review and for vocabulary. Or it could be an introduction. You could do it that way too. All right, so today, N, the N card, we talked about eudicots, and the bleeding heart is, in fact, a eudicot. Then we're going to look at R, which we talked about not stems, we talked about leaves. So we're going to look at the leaves of the bleeding heart and do some identification there. And then we're going to look at the flower itself. So at the very center of a flower is the pistil. So that will be there first. And then surrounding the pistil are the stamens or the stamina. And around the stamina are the petals. And when you have all of the petals on one flower, that's called the corolla. And then around all the petals are the sepals. So all the sepals together are called the calyx. And if you have these two together, so petals all together is corolla, sepals all together is calyx. Corolla and calyx together become the perianth, which is easy to remember because peri is like perimeter in math, so around. And then anth, like anther, which is part of the stamen, which is the thing they directly surround, right? So these two are generally what happens on a eudicot, which is why we have our N card here. But if it's not a eudicot, usually on monocots and on the Magnoliidae, obviously, since this is our magnolia, there are tepals. So if you can't tell the difference between the sepal and the petals, and they all look the same, like they do on this magnolia, then they're all called the tepals. Everyone is called a tepal. All right, and then bonus, we're going to look at a couple more things. Around the flower itself are the bracts. So one more layer out. And then we're going to look at inflorescence. So in the E card, we talked about ray florets and compared that with the disc florets. So that's just one type of inflorescence, and there are many inflorescences. I actually had this inflorescence incorrect. So I had written down the inflorescence, which is raceme, for the Lamprocopnos. So that is a true raceme, and this one is a little bit different. So we'll look at that when we actually see how it's arranged. And also, just so you know, if you are going to dissect a bleeding heart, which you should do, they're amazing. You might want to wear gloves. They're a little bit poisonous, not very much, but they are a little bit. So just want to warn you. All right, guys. So the first thing we're going to look at with our leaf is the shape. So think of the shape as if you were just seeing a silhouette of it, the outline of it. What does it look like? What's the overall general shape? So I'm going to lay this down here, and we're going to take a look at the general overall shape. You can see that there's this central piece, and then there are little branches that are coming out from the sides. So I'm going to zoom in a little. We can look at it a little more closely. But that central piece with the branching sides, that is actually called pinnate. So it's going to happen in a couple places. So we have this central, and then we have the branches coming out. So the overall leaf shape is pinnate. Each one of these are just leaflets because this entire section is the leaf because there are no nodes. If there's not a node there, then you know that these are all part of the same leaf. So this is a compound leaf. There's a couple of kinds of compound leaves. It can be palmate, which is where every leaf comes to a central point, but because these leaves are arranged, stacked, and branching out, it is not the same. So this is our pinnate compound leaf. Now we're going to look at the margin. So the margin is the edge of the leaf. So let's look at this one right here. It goes around and comes in pretty sharply all the way around. Here's another little sharp indentation. So every time it comes in sharply, that's a cleft. So the leaf margin, which is the edge of the leaf, is going to be cleft on this one. Cleft and lobe are really related. So lobed, it would just be more rounded. Instead of having these deep jags, it would have a more rounded shape like an oak leaf. So we've got pinnate compound leaf shape, and then we have a margin that's cleft, and the very last thing we're going to look at is our venation. So the venation is how the veins are arranged in the leaf. So let's see which one is going to be easy. This one looks pretty good. So if we go up this central vein right here, it branches to the left and to the right, then it goes up some more and branches to the left and then branches to the right, then it goes up, right, left. So as it keeps branching up, that's the same thing we saw here. So we saw this central one and the branching out to the side, so it's going to have the same name, pinnate. So the venation is pinnate, okay? All right, so that is our leaf shapes and names. Lots of ways to classify things. Next, we're going to look at the inflorescence of the flower. So inflorescence is how the flowers are arranged on the plant. So this one, because it has a central stem right here, and then it has a little branch off of it, and this branch has multiple flowers. See this? A lot of these are off of here. Here, let me get a different one and see. Let's try this one. So right here, again, I've been pulling off all the flowers. So you can see on this first one here at the top how it branches, and then there are two coming off, and there probably were more. There can be many, many coming off of each one. So here, I'll show you this guy. This is one that has been around for a while, as you can see. These are all enlarged ovaries. So here's a great example right here. So there's this central stem and then a branch off the central stem. And right here we have three that are really easy to see. And it looks like there was maybe another one there. So that is called a pedestal, I believe. I wrote it on my card earlier. I had raceme, and that wasn't correct. No, I'm sorry. So this right here, do you see this? From where the branch is, and then it connects in, this little tiny piece is the pedestal. Sorry. P-E-D-I-C-E-L, if you're going to write it down. So that's that little piece that connects the flower to the stem. And the shape is actually, sounds very similar. It's panicle. Don't panic. It's just a panicle inflorescence. So panicle is when it has this nice long piece and then it has a branch with several flowers on that one branch. So if it were raceme, what would have happened is that there would only be one flower on each. So that's the difference between raceme, which is what the Lamprocopnis spectabilis, the other bleeding heart that we did, it just had one central peduncle and then it had these, like a single pedestal with a single flower, raceme. But this one is the panicle because it has a branch and multiple off of the main stem. All right, that's another way that the Asian and American bleeding hearts are different. All right, so that was the E, was the inflorescence. And you can see it a little bit down here. So I just want to show you a baby inflorescence. This one, sorry. So this tiny baby inflorescence, it's really difficult to see all of the different pieces, right? So, but they're there. You can see that as it comes off of the main branch that there are multiple flowers. So that's going to indicate to you that it's a panicle. So even though you can't see them all really well, if you see all of these individual flowers, then you know that's panicle. All right, so we're going to find on this one the bracts. Remember, that was our outermost part. So coming off of the pedestal, which is the little piece of stem that connects the flower to the main part of the stem, is going to be a bract. That's the next thing that we're going to see. Oh, see that one? There's a little tiny bract. So in relationship to the flower, it doesn't really look that much smaller. There are a few over here that you can see coming off a little bit. Been pulling at them a little. So they would generally tuck right around the flower, but I've been trying to separate things out so we could see them a little better. Oh wow, and so in this one, you're actually seeing a lot more. So right here at the base, you can see this sepal, and then it's even starting to separate right here. So sorry, I think I called that the wrong thing because I started looking ahead. So down here at the base is the bract, and then on either side of the corolla are these two fused sepals. So we know that petals only come in groups of 3, 4, or 5. So since there are 2 here, we know that something had to get fused. So what I'm thinking is there are 2 fused petals on this side and 2 fused petals on this side. This is a eudicot, and eudicots like to make petals in groups of 4 or 5. And then this part that's in the center is the corolla. What's really interesting about this flower, unlike a lot of flowers, most flowers need pollinators. We talk a lot about pollinators and nectar guides. This flower actually has this nice enclosed little space right here, and it self-pollinates. So it pollinates before it even opens. It actually doesn't ever, it only opens when it's ripe. So there it is. Inside there, you have to cut it open in order to see the pistils and stamens. There's actually only 1 pistil and 1 ovary down here at the base. So let's see if we can look a little more deeply inside at these guys. Here's a little tiny flower. So we've got sepal and sepal on the other side. Our fused sepals. So these 2 together are going to be the calyx right there. That's the calyx all together. Then the next thing we're going to get to is okay, the bleeding hearts are really difficult because they're enclosed. So you kind of have to cut them open in order to get to the inside. But as you do that, the stamen like to come out because the stamen are actually attached at the base to the sepals. So it's a little tricky. All right, got it open. So there it is in all its glory, falling apart. So you can kind of see right there in the center, we have the pistil and the stamen around it. It'll be a little easier as we get to bigger flowers. So now we see some color coming in. The top, so this is where it attaches. This is where the pedestal comes. And these are the heart parts. They're so tiny right now. They start out really small. So these are your sepals. We'll pull them apart. And the sepals are actually what give Dicentra their name. So di means 2, like bi. So di is Greek, bi is Latin. But they both mean 2. So you have these 2 spurs. This little piece right here will actually come out like this later on as it develops. All right, so let's see if we can open this guy. I'm gonna get an X-Acto so that we can take a little closer look in there. So the way that this Corolla opens is on its side. And again, I believe that the petals are fused. So there are 2 on either side. Come on. All right, so here we go. I'm gonna open it up. So you can tell, I know it's really hard to see with these guys because they're really small. Right here, that this is the corolla. See how it gets kind of wavy there on the edge of the petal? That's the corolla, and it has this little piece on the end. So that is the corolla that hangs down below the sepals. When it's bigger, it's like this. So here's the corolla at the base. It's hanging down below the calyx, below these sepals right here. Then in the center, they really like to snug together. So here they are in this tiny little cavity, and you can see all that pollen right there. So they're just self-pollinating in there, and you can, hopefully we'll get to pull this apart. Yeah, a little bit. They're so tricky when they're small. There we go. All right, so there are 3 stamens or stamina on this side, and then there are going to be 3 on the other side. Like that. And then right in the center is the pistil. So here is this pistil. It's very tiny right now, and you can see that on the tip is the stigma, and the stigma is covered in pollen. So that pollen attaches to the stigma, then it goes down this style, and then it ends up here in the ovary at the base. It's so tiny, it's hard to see these things. So these on the side, there are 6 stamens or stamina. They're kind of fused. So the filaments are a little bit fused, as you can see, and then they separate out a little more as they get to where the anther are. And so here are the anther over here, and they have the pollen on the tips of the anther. Let's see if we can pull it back just a tiny bit and see, or a lot. And see the base of the pistil. That guy's different. There we go. Oh yeah, that is definitely worth seeing. That's really cool. So it's almost yellow right now. So pistil in the center. Then we have the stamens around it, and around that is the corolla. It pulls off a little differently. And then on the very outside are the sepals, and all the sepals makes the calyx. All right, let's try the next one. They should get a lot easier from here on. So this one, you should be able to see the bract on the outside. Yep, there it is, right here. Very small, so it has 2, one on either side. And then let's see if we can pull off these. Move this guy a little bit. So I know that this one's pink and this one's white, and I really just think that there are some different colors on here. They're all a little different. All right, so this is a fun part when you start pulling it off. The lady in a bath that you can do with the Lamprocopnis happens when you pull those sepals to the side. But it's a little harder with Dicentra. It doesn't like to separate as much. All right, so I'm going to pull it apart with my hands real quick so that you can see a little better. The tiny ones aren't worth doing like that. Okay. So here we go. We've got sepal, sepal, and the corolla is really cool. So the corolla is like almost inverted. See how thin it is down here at the base? So the petals are real tiny, and then they get bigger, and they close up like this. So you can just cut them open down the center. And let's see, get it all the way through. Yeah. All right, so that's that little cavity there at the base where it gets self-pollinated. You can see the stamens are a little easier to distinguish now. You see how you can see the sections of them here? And then the anthers usually separate out a little more. So you can see all 3 on that side, And then there are 3 over here on this side. So then here's our pistil right in the center. It's nice and green, makes it easy to identify. So it's getting a little more distinguished. You can still see here at the top where the stigma is, that it has lots of pollen down there. So again, our pollen gets onto the stigma, goes down the style, and now it's really forming in the ovary. So there are all these little tiny ovules that are in the ovary that will make seeds. Here we have another really pink one, and you can see right here, this is where the pedestal joins the branched peduncle, right? So the peduncle is the big piece that holds the flowers, and then the pedestal is the little piece that joins the flower here. And because there were several, it's pretty short and you can tell where it was. So look at this bract. See how dark it is? There it is right here on the top. This bract. And then there's going to be another one on the other side over here. And then we'll see if we can slice into this guy. Might be easier. Just, oh look, that's almost a little lady in the bath form. So as it opens up, you start to see that green ovary in there. All right, so here it is. Let's see if we can separate out all the pieces. So this is like the lady in the bath look. When it starts to open up, you can see inside that ovary. It's nice and large, getting big and green in there. So you see these little pieces right here. Look on the sides. This is the stamens. They're all kind of stuck. And then same thing over here on the other side. The stamens are going to be stuck together. So we're going to pull them out of the corolla. And then this up here is our corolla. And again, it has 2 sides. So we're going to split that. I want to do it without breaking anything. There we go. All right. So there we go, the 2 halves of the corolla. So really these are the petals, right? And so we can't have 2 petals, so it's fused. And you can kind of see on the back, see this nice wavy part, so that's where they're getting fused on the back. And then here in the middle, there's our pistil, right there. And at the base, let's take a look at this ovary. So you can tell that the ovary is getting a little bigger. And let's cut into it and see if we can find any of those ovules. Yeah, there we go. Look at that. Really easy to see all of them in there. So they're just tiny and white. And they're attached to the ovary. Nice, so we'll get a little bit bigger. So I'm going to show you 2 different ones, what happened. So we have this guy looking pretty sad. And then we have this one looking really plump. So what's happened here is that this one has not been pollinated, right? So something happened, or maybe, while it was forming, something happened here in the ovary. But you can see that it's all gotten brown and it doesn't really have anything going on. So usually by the time it's brown, it's really big. So we'll cut in there and see what we can find out. So there are a bunch of ovaries. They were little ovules, but they're still really white and really small. So there's that guy. Doesn't seem to have much going on. This one definitely seems to have a lot more going on. So pedestal. Let's sepals. Is there still a bract on there? Let's see if we can find it. Yep, there's our bract. These are the petals, the corolla right here on the end. They're still stuck together there. And then let's see if we can cut open this ovary. See what's happening inside. Yes, wow. So look at that. Instead of these really tiny ones, like we had over here in this dried up one, these are nice and round. They're still attached. See how they're still attached to the sides of the ovary? They're getting bigger. And then we'll come and see, hopefully, this one might not be ready yet. If it isn't, I'll find us a better one. You never know until you open it up. Aha! Here we go, guys. What is happening? This is really cool. So they're getting dark. So they were just pure white, but now some of them are starting to ripen. Very cool. Let's see if I can just cut this lower so it'll open up more. And then let's see if we can find a really fatty one. I bet we can. All right. Oh, you know what? I think this one's gonna be good. All right, so before we get to our one that I had for last, let's see if we can look in here. So this one, woof, even more shrivelly. Yeah, so there's our tiny bract. Hold on, it's running away. Come here. So, tiny, tiny bract. There's our pedestal. These are our sepals. Together they're the calyx, right here. And then, hard to see, hard to identify as it goes along, but the sepals really want to stay. This part right here that's looped together, that is the corolla. It's just totally dried up. All right, this ovary is starting to open up. No problem. It is ready to open. And why is it ready to open? Because all of its seeds are black. Look at all these guys. So if we open up this one, which they're all falling out because they have better places to go. They got to go plant themselves. You can see right here on the ovary where all these little bumps are, and that is where the ovules were attached. But now that they are black and they're ripe seeds, they are just ready to go and they don't need to be attached anymore. All right, so let's do a quick review just so you can see that progression. So there they all are. There's our teeny tiny one, and then it gets bigger and bigger still. You're starting to see the ovule, the ovary a lot better, and that beautiful corolla here at the base, all those petals. Then it gets a little bigger. Still lots of pollen in there. We've got our stamen. Here's our pistil with our teeny, teeny, tiny ovules down here. Then it gets bigger. Hopefully, not like this. Hopefully it ends up doing this and starts developing these seeds. Here's our corolla all drying up. These petals are not needed anymore. And our stamen aren't needed anymore, but they're just hanging on. And then it gets even bigger and it starts to change color. So we've got some browns, some black ones already. Some of them are more ripe than others. And this, all the sepals and right here's the corolla. Really dry. And then even more dry, corolla, stamen, calyx, and then Don't even know if there's a little bract anymore. All the seeds are coming out. And then at the very end, everything is dried up. There's your bract still hanging on. Sepals or calyx, all of them. And then I think that this is the corolla, even though it's really sad and tiny. Here's your ovary. The ovary's all dried up and the seeds are just coming out on their own. All right, guys. There it is. That is all the stages of the flower, which is really, I love seeing how the flower develops and grows and how the seeds develop inside. So I hope that you enjoyed this and I hope it helped you with your vocabulary. I tried to say everything a bunch of times so that you could remember. And now you're ready for the big question. So I told you that this plant, this bleeding heart, is a eudicot. And I told you that eudicots have sepals and petals. But when we looked at this flower, it was really difficult for me to distinguish the petals from the sepals. So those sepals were these beautiful pink with little purple tips on there. And so my question is this. If you can't distinguish the sepals and petals, it's called a tepal, and tepals are really for monocots. However, what really makes a eudicot is that it has dicotyledons, seed leaves. So we know for sure that it's a eudicot, whether or not it has tepals or sepals and petals. So I'm going to put a poll on the Facebook page, and I'm going to let you tell me whether or not you think that this bleeding heart is rogue and it's a little different and exciting and it has tepals, or you think it's totally normal and it has sepals and petals. So I'd love to hear what you think. Let me know and enjoy the other videos. Thanks, guys. Bye.